the maintaining factors, and these factors are factors that we can act on, because as we saw, the earlier factors we can't really change. We can't change sex. An anxious behavior can be worked on in psychotherapy or things like that, but we say that it is usually a rather stable characteristic amongst people. The fact of having family history of insomnia, that's not something that we can change. The fact of receiving psychological treatments, we can't change that either. We can't really change the fact that we have hot flashes either, because as you know, hormone therapy, which is the most efficient way to treat hot flashes, are often not recommended for women who have received cancer treatment. So as I said, there's not much we can do on the predisposing factors or precipitating factors, which make the difficulties appear. But the perpetuating factors, there's two categories of these. And these are two categories of factors on which we do have power, on which we do have some control. And this explains why the fact of working on these factors to change or modify these factors will have a very positive effect on sleep, as you're going to see a bit later. So there are two factors that make insomnia persist over time. There are behavior aspects, and there are cognitive aspects. The thinkings or beliefs that are inexact about sleeping. So if we start about maladaptive sleep behaviors, these are really habits that we develop when we start having sleeping difficulties. We have a tendency to spend an excessive amount of time in bed, staying awake in bed. I was describing earlier this typical scenario of someone who has sleeping difficulties, moving from one side to the other in bed. And the more you stay in bed, the more you become agitated, anxious to falling asleep, frustrated, etc. And that is a bad habit, and I'll explain to you why, and I'll also show you how you can act on that. So an excessive amount of time spent in bed awake, an irregular sleep-wake schedule. We saw earlier in the data that I showed that when we start having sleeping difficulties or suffering of insomnia, we often have a tendency to compensate from the lack of sleep. So for example, if last night I managed to only sleep 5 hours in my night, well, it's very possible that this morning I had the tendency to sleep later, or I'll go to bed earlier in the evening to recuperate the hours of sleep that I didn't get the previous night. And that is very bad, and we'll see later why, and it really is one of the perpetuating factors. I spoke earlier a little about the negative effect of napping also during the day. That's also part of the maladaptive sleep behaviors. Also, engaging in sleep-interfering activities in the bedroom. What we mean by that, in fact, the bedroom should really be only for sleeping, and the only exception would be sexual relations. The rest are activities that don't encourage sleep. They're rather sleep-interfering activities that contribute to keeping us active, either by our thoughts or on a physiological level, and that's really incompatible. It really has an incompatibility with the sleep. To watch TV in bed, reading in bed, surfing the net while in bed, working in your bedroom. These are all activities that interfere with your sleep and that should not be done in the bedroom if you suffer from insomnia. And we'll see these aspects further later. The other are the cognitive factors, the faulty beliefs and attitudes about sleep. I listed three examples, which are the most frequent ones, like I absolutely need 8 hours of sleep to function well during the day. That is really a belief that is very set not only amongst the people suffering insomnia, but also amongst the people who sleep very well. And it's not actually very true. And we'll see later how that can be a problem and how to modify these beliefs. Another is that I was in a bad mood today because I did not sleep well yesterday. So it is to link everything that goes wrong during your day to the fact that you weren't able to sleep well. And the third, which is more specific to cancer patients and very frequent amongst them that we heard a lot in our clinical research, if I don't sleep well, my cancer will come back. And we'll see later how that is untrue and how we can act on that. So how do these factors maintain sleep difficulties over time? So first of all, for the maladaptive sleep behaviors, like for example, napping during the day or to having an irregular um, schedule, to spend too much time in bed, has two negative impacts. First of all, it desynchronizes our biological clock. We have a lot of physiological functions that are controlled on a 24-hour period, and so our waking sleeping cycle has to do that. And with good sleepers, we can see that that is extremely regular. They will fall asleep or they'll feel sleepy pretty much at the same time every night, and they will wake up often even without their alarm clock pretty much every time at the same time in the morning. And this is an indication that they really have a biological clock that is really well synchronized and very stable. When you start having the sleeping disorders and you start having the maladaptive behaviors like the napping that I mentioned, it desynchronizes our biological clock. So our body doesn't really know anymore when would be the time to feel sleepy, to go to bed, and they don't really, and the body doesn't really know either when to wake you up because our schedule is in shambles. So that is one of the negative impact of the bad sleeping habits. The second is that many of these behaviors weaken the association that should exist between the bedroom and sleep, or the bed and sleep. Again, I'll take the example of a good sleeper who goes to bed. It will instantly tell his or her brain to send the message, it's time to sleep, and in a few minutes, the good sleeper will fall asleep. People who suffer insomnia, for them, the bedroom is so associated to so many other things than sleep, whether to worry because we're not able to fall asleep, whether it's doing some work, surfing on the net, reading, that the association is weakened. So the person comes into their bedroom, there's no strong signal sent to the brain that it's now time to sleep. The opposite, often the bedroom for people who suffer from chronic insomnia will be linked with anxiety. The person comes into their bedroom and they will start to worry, oh, I hope I'll be able to fall asleep tonight. If I won't sleep, I won't be functional tomorrow. And this really brings in a lot of anxiety. And we know that anxiety is not really the state that we're seeking when we want to fall asleep. We want to rather to be relaxed. So this explains why these sleep behaviors that I mentioned earlier are negative. Now, when we go to the faulty beliefs about sleep, uh, like for example, saying, well, if I don't sleep well, my cancer will come back. This is negative because it brings what we call performance anxiety. This is maybe a complicated term to simply say that the person will feel anxious uh, facing their capability of sleeping. So there'll be an internal speech full of thinking, I have to sleep, I have to sleep, and having these thoughts will reduce the probability of falling asleep, because I mentioned earlier, anxiety is a state that is opposite to what we're seeking, which is to be relaxed.